Here goes. For the second one here, the theme is HR technology, the overarching theme. The idea for this debate actually comes from a LinkedIn post from Ricardo from already quite a few months ago, highlighting the 7 HR mistakes that are wrecking companies, including the underutilization of technology. According to a survey by Gartner, only 24% of HR leaders maximize the full potential of HR technology and business value. This is despite many of them believing that HR technology is important and impactful for staff and organizations, according to the same survey. So then, what is causing this gap? The report states that 69% of those surveyed in February 2024 said that they faced at least one barrier when interacting with HR technology over the past year. One person in Gartner's HR practice added that while HR leaders believe that HR technology is impactful and important, they continue to struggle with how to gain the most value. All right, so that indicates a need for more education then, right? Or is there something else that plays a role? The article discussing the survey results then continues with HR staff are concerned about how evolving technology will impact their jobs and careers. Nearly half of the HR employees surveyed shared that HR tech has removed parts of the jobs they liked. And almost 1/4 of wider employees think AI could replace jobs in the next 5 years. So, could this then be the real reason for the underutilization of technology in HR? Let's get into this with our second statement. And here goes. The underutilization of technology in HR is caused by fear, not by a lack of digital skills. I'm going to start with you this time, Jessie. Do you say yes or no, or something in between?
Okay, so it's not caused by a lack of fear. I think that's a no, but I don't think it's also a lack of digital skills, why it's underutilized in business. I actually think of a deeper issue, which we can touch on, but I think it's more about competency and skill set than definitely not. I don't think fear is why people aren't using it. I think if there's fear, it's coming from something, the deeper root cause isn't fear. The fear is maybe the symptom of the cause. So it's kind of a no, it's kind of a yes. I don't know what that answer is, but we're going to go with it.
It's probably a
maybe.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ricardo, what do you say to this statement?
I agree to a certain extent. In my experience, I would probably say it's experiencing fear, having some lack of digital skills, and I would say a lack of leadership in HR as a profession. I would say those 3 things really make up the issue here, in my experience.
All right, so I'm going to write that down as a yes and.
Yes.
All right, Jessie, we're going to go back to you first. Yeah, what thoughts do you have on this one?
So, I mean, I said it's not about fear and it's not about skill in digital skills. And I think it's partly true in what I said, but it's also partly not true in what I said, because I think there are elements of those things in why tech is not adopted well into business in HR. Where I think it comes from is from a lack of strategy, business strategy. So if you look at why do people get tech? What is the tech for? What is it serving? What parts of the business is it going to automate, improve, speed up, whatever? What kind of tasks is it taking over or making, less admin, whatever it is? What is the improvement? Is it better? Is it designed better? Is it just easier to move through so it's faster to use for users? What is it exactly that this tech is doing? And what is it serving for? And is it serving the business with what it needs now with the highest priority? So I think a lot of the problem isn't the tech. It's the fact that the business strategy wasn't clear enough, which meant that the people strategy, which is people leadership, wasn't clear enough. There wasn't enough questions there. It's siloed. It's not shared. It's no shared vision. And then you've got people buying tech going, I think I want to fix this one little component in the wheel, right? And they're just going, I need to fix this issue, but they're not doing systems thinking. They're not thinking broadly enough. They're not looking at what I did for years, which is portfolio management. What is the best use of this money or this resource for the business? What is the best return on investment? If you're in TA, you're like, well, I want my widget. I want my thing that like automates sourcing. It's like, but is that what the business needs you to have? Is that the biggest priority? Is that the best thing we could spend this money on? Maybe not. Right. And so you have also like these tools usually affect not just HR, they affect other parts of the business. So you've got adoption issues because you're not just like affecting your own team and your own kind of departments, you're affecting the whole business with a choice usually. So you have misalignment of strategy. You've got potentially tooling that isn't the biggest priority being implemented and chosen, which means that, and usually not implemented well, let's be honest, there's lack of resourcing, no project management, change management. The procurement process is generally terrible, which, by the way, Gartner also has a study that said that about 80-something% of HR tech purchases are regretted. Like you buy tech, 80-something% of the time, you're not happy with the decision because of an unstructured buying process. And that comes back to because you don't know what the hell you need, because you don't know what the business strategy is. You don't know, you haven't defined things well enough. You buy it, then you get it there and you're like, oh, this isn't solving my problems. This is just making headaches and it's not implemented well. And is it the tool? Is it the implementation? Is it the features that it has? Like no one even knows what the actual cause of the problem is. So you're like, we'll get rid of that in a year and a half and we'll get a new one and that'll fix the problem. Then you repeat the cycle, right? So summarizing that, because that was a lot, you got strategy and business not aligning. You've got the lack of like structured buying, lack of procurement, knowing what to buy that aligns to the strategy. Then you've got the fact that you have adoption broadly across the business, right? Those things are usually, in what I've seen, especially coming from a projects background, usually what I see around, the end of a project, what's going wrong. When you look at like benefits realization, is this really solving the problem we thought it would solve? Yes or no? A lot of the time, no. In HR, it's actually why I started Stakkd, because I saw so many people just picking the wrong inverted commas tech or not doing the structured buying, procurement process and not really understanding the market and what was there. They also didn't know what they were buying. They didn't know what they needed. So that's like the first step. Yeah. And then, like I said, change management, all that kind of stuff, it's all a bit of a mess. So there's a lot to unpack in that for everyone listening, but that's what I think the reason why HR struggle with getting, the right adoption into fintech, into the business. I don't think it's fear. Fear comes because all that stuff happens. People say it's HR's fault. Then they go, oh, I got really bad backlash. But I actually don't know I don't know if this isn't really solving our problems. This is causing more headaches. Then you start to get less confident in yourself. You have uncertainty, breeds fear, means you probably don't want to do it again, means you're less likely to be open to a new project next time, right? You get the blame game. So it all kind of feeds onto itself. That's why I kind of said yes and no. It's not like, fear, yes. Competency, I'm going to say, isn't the biggest issue in terms of digital skill set. I think it's competency in other skills like asking the right questions, system thinking, procurement, change management, project management, these kind of skill sets. Learning the actual tool itself, I don't think that's the challenge. I think everyone's does generally learn the tool itself quite okay. But there's all these other challenges of competencies around that.
Nice. I like it. It was indeed a lot. There is indeed a lot to unpack, but I do now understand very well the yes and no answer to the statement. So
After
thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Ricardo, I would love to hear from you as well.
I agree that it's such a loaded question. There's so many things there. It's interesting just right off the top of my head, like when you mentioned how, people aren't sure like what features to select and all of that. It reminds me of HR profession as a whole has such a high rate of turnover, especially in the leadership positions where, I found myself constantly starting a new job with a company and you have no idea why certain decisions were made when it came to like the tech stack, because, you start questioning why was that chosen? That doesn't make any sense. Right. And then there's such a, it just creates chaos all around when it comes to, so I completely could agree with that sentiment about 80% of people saying that, they regretted their tech choices. But, when I wrote that article for LinkedIn, really, where that came from is oftentimes we would do these comprehensive HR evaluations or audits for HR functions, right? So we go into a business and we basically grade their entire function from A to Z, their employment practices, their tech stack, payroll, benefits, the whole 9 yards. And when we're looking at the tech portion specifically, we would constantly see that the business was paying for features from an HRIS provider, let's say, that they weren't taking advantage of. And we talked to the HR team, well, why aren't you guys taking advantage of this? Usually the answer was something along the lines of, we didn't even know we were paying for that, or we didn't even know we had that feature set with this particular technology. Sometimes they would tell us it was a lack of time. They just didn't have enough time to implement that specific module in that software, or that specific piece of technology. So that's where I would say, oftentimes when we do these audits, we would come back and say, you're underutilizing the technology you're already paying for. You're not leveraging it correctly. So we would get all sorts of different feedback from the employees with respect to the why behind it. And, overall, I would say sometimes it was a lack of digital skills, but it wasn't I think the stronger portion when I say a lack of leadership in the HR profession is because oftentimes the people that that especially a lot of small businesses put into positions of HR leadership just weren't empowered to lead the HR function in the first place. So if they're not really empowered, then they can't even come up with a comprehensive strategy because the CEO is going to shoot it down, or they're not going to go with whatever the HR person is saying. So it made it really difficult for them to come in and say, okay, this is the direction we're going. This is the reason why. And then, we want you to leverage and we're going to give you the time to, implement all these solutions. It just wasn't happening because of the lack of leadership. And it wasn't necessarily the individual's fault. It's just as a profession, HR is generally disregarded, or they're not empowered enough the way that they should be, especially for smaller businesses, and that created a lot of chaos as a result.
Yeah, I do in a way observe some similarities though in what both of you are saying here, which is kind of nice. I think before we go to the third debate. And I think those listening to the podcast regularly, they always know that wherever possible, I like us to basically take responsibility ourselves wherever we can and to the extent in which we can. So perhaps some words of advice or something that we can actually individually do to improve this. And I can imagine it's a little bit along the same lines as what we've been talking about in the previous debate, but maybe something else. What can we individually do to how do you say that? To tackle this lack of this underutilization of HR technology? Anything that comes to mind? Jessie, I'll start with you again.
I think it's about asking the right questions. I think that's something that I was always taught very early on in my career, is to ask questions. Don't just blindly follow along with things, understand it. Oh, we're doing this project. Oh, why? Is this the most important thing on the list that the business should be doing? It's okay to ask questions. They don't have to be malicious. They don't have to be, you don't have to rebel against what's happening, but just asking questions, oh, is this part of a broader strategy plan? Do other people in the other teams know that this is happening? Things like that when you're starting projects can really help to then alleviate some of the issues, maybe once you actually get the tech to then, people buying in, but also with, underutilizing, it is a lot about time. So, it's hard to say put aside time because I've been in that situation where I was working crazy hours and I didn't have time to breathe or eat, let alone play around in the tool to check I wasn't underutilizing, to be honest. And I actually, this is going to sound, it's kind of it's not necessarily advice, but it's kind of an opinion. It's not really your problem as a HR person if you're underutilizing the tool because you have a lack of time because the business is so unstructured that you are unable to fully roll out a product like a Thai HR tech and know how it works and deliver that value for the business. If there hasn't been the support given to you and the leadership is not enabling that project to happen properly, I actually don't think you should feel bad about not knowing every little itty bitty feature in your system. Sure, it's great. But if the business is having issues, you can flag and be look, I think there's features that I just don't know about. Flag it with leadership. Be I'd love to focus on this, but I'm just oversubscribed. Let me know if this is a priority for us, or if you'd rather that I deprioritize that. That's something you're in control of. Flag it, share it, ask for prioritization. But I don't think it's something you should deeply feel worried about. Leadership have more of a responsibility to understand that and ask the questions about the project, about the return on investment, that utilization to get people like Ricardo into the business where there's investment to like help understand where things are going off track. You know, like those are the things that we can do as leaders or as HR professionals. Outside of that, I don't think there's a lot more once the tech's in the business. I think a lot of it has to be front loaded into why we're doing the tech, how do we get it in the business, how do we roll it out. That needs a lot more attention. Then once it's there, of course we need to put attention, but once it's there, there's limited things that you can control after that point as an individual contributor in the team and a non-decision maker.
Thank you. Good points there. Ricardo.
Yeah, so I mean, in my experience, I think the thing that works the best and that has worked well for the consulting clients that I've partnered with is really empowering the team to put more pressure on the third-party vendors. And what I mean by that is oftentimes, like I said, you know, HR has a lot of turnover, right? So let's say you're a new leader that comes in to a new company and you don't really have a relationship with whomever implemented the HRIS solution that's in place now. You start by putting pressure on the vendor by saying, okay, look, just be candid. Hey, I'm the new leader for this company. I'm new here. I have no idea why they agreed to sign up with you guys as a solution for our tech needs. And I want to go through the entire process. Talk to me as if I'm a new customer. Sell me your solution. Let me understand what you guys are capable of, what you guys are able to do today. What is your feature set? What problems do you solve? What pain points are you addressing? So that I can become fully acquainted with what your solution is as a business. And then now that I'm better acquainted with your solution, I can start taking advantage of, okay, well, you guys are able to do this. Okay, great. Let's implement that. Or why haven't we implemented that solution before? And then, you know, starting the process as if you're a new customer, because all too often, once the solution has been in place, nobody's asking these questions again. So I think that's a great first step, because oftentimes, you know, we'll look at the contracts for any of these vendors, whether it's an HRIS system, a payroll company, a workers' comp, whatever it is. And we realize that the vendor is offering, oh, we do X, Y, and Z. And as a value add, we also do X, Y, and Z. But the company then forgets that that's part of the contract and they're not taking advantage of it, but they're paying for those services all the same. So by kind of having this conversation again and putting pressure on these vendors to say, look, you guys promised to do this, help us implement this solution, realize that you're not alone. It's not entirely on you. And sometimes these vendors are more than happy to help you because it's what they're already committed to. They've already said, we can help you with this, but they need somebody from the business to reach out to them to ask and put in that request. And they're more than happy to help you. And then you get what you need, which is help with implementing whatever feature set maybe you haven't been taking advantage of.
I really like that. I like that one.
Me too.
Yeah. And I mean, it's such a important thing as the leader in the team to understand the tech that your team has. And I think it should be, you know, if you're a new leader or if you're a leader and you know this tech, but you don't know what the tech does because you weren't involved in it, because it was delegated or, you know, whatever it is, like you should know all the tech. Like it is your foundation of your team. So yeah, absolutely agree with that, Ricardo. Good suggestion.
Yeah. So great points. Thank you so much. Oh, did you want to add something?
We're just in full agreement today. There's
no
debate.
But I mean, we have one debate left. So let's see what this third debate is going to bring.